when you talk about Craig Smith, you have to look at this firing about what's going on off the court and behind the scenes. His relationship with donors had frayed, apparently, as it was reported by Steve Bartle, and the fraying of those relationships had hurt his ability to drum up money for NIL, right? And, down the street, you've got Kevin Young and BYU. And again, we're talking off the floor because Utah beat BYU on the floor this year. Okay. Like on the floor, they beat them. And the only time they faced each other this year. And their records are not that much different, but there is so much different going on off the court at BYU. You hire Kevin Young. He's this NBA mind, right? He runs their entire program like it's an NBA organization. That is extremely attractive, not only to recruits, but to winning in college basketball right now, because as we're starting to see, this is just a different era we're in right now with college basketball and with it becoming more like a professional sport. That's really how it's being run. So there was issues with generating money for NIL. And, when you get a big-time donor from Utah who's going to cut off the purse strings because he doesn't like the coach, that's a problem for your NIL. So it's not necessarily like Fran Fraschilla was tweeting yesterday, and he brought up a very good point. Like, why would you take that job? There's no NIL money. And then this guy, Steve Bartle, who's the insider for Utah, stated another case. And Fran was saying that for any job, it's impossible to win. He was just saying, hey, some of these jobs are impossible. If there's no NIL money, I wouldn't want to take a job somewhere because it's just going to be impossible to win, especially in the Big 12. But this guy, Steve Bartle, was saying, hey, wait a minute. If Utah hires a coach that connects with the alum, connects with big-time donors, that NIL situation could change quickly. And now, if you believe what Steve Bartle is saying, I know what Fran is saying is true, but Steve Bartle is saying there's potential here for someone to make a lot of money for NIL just by being who they are, right? A coach's responsibility is not necessarily to run around and fundraise, although that has become way more of a responsibility than it used to be. But the NIL, ultimately now we're seeing wherever you're coaching, what you have in the NIL is now trailed back to what the college basketball coach and what that coach is able to do as far as he attractive to donors? Are they going to give money to NIL? Are these collectives going to go to bat for this coach? Again, according to Steve Bartle's reporting, Craig Smith's relationships with big-time donors had somewhat soured. And I think maybe he said, I don't know if soured's the right word, but you get the picture. The guys who write the checks weren't happy with the coach, and they're going to stop writing the checks. So this is a situation now where 4 years ago, when Utah hired Craig Smith, first they went to Alex Jensen. Now, Alex Jensen is an assistant coach with the Dallas Mavericks right now. Alex Jensen was an assistant coach for a long time with the Utah Jazz. Apparently, he still has a house out in Utah. He's still very connected there. He played for Rick Majerus when they went to the Final Four. By the way, reading up, I knew who Alex Jensen was because I remember him from playing for Rick Majerus. And I also remembered that he was the G League coach of the Canton Charge when I was calling games for the NBA Development League, it was at the time. And I was in Springfield, Massachusetts. So we played the Cleveland Charge, must have played them 100 times in one season. That's kind of how those minor league deals go. But Alex Jensen is somebody who is very attractive to donors around Utah. He's also extremely attractive to players because he now is just like Kevin Young in that he's an NBA assistant that would probably come to Utah and completely institute that NBA mentality, that NBA culture, and run it like a professional organization. A couple things really jump out at me here, and it's not a surprise that the fact that BYU and Utah, they're having another, there's a shootout in the streets now. not just in the, on the court. And this has been going on forever between these two schools. But the rivalry is such that folks up at the top for Utah are looking around and they're saying, wait a minute, Kevin Young is making amazing progress. This program is making amazing progress off the court. I mean, everybody in Utah is talking about the sexy new coach at BYU, Kevin Young. And, he's gotten a ton of NIL money. He got the number one prospect in college basketball is committed to going to play at BYU. Meanwhile, you've got a guy who I find to be exciting, but he's more of a video game player than anything. But, he's not like a prolific Umir, where like Norshad underneath, he'll get you victories. Like Gabe Manson's fun and he's exciting, but he'll shoot you right out of a game. And that's the best player that Utah has. Your best player, if you're Utah, is actually someone who I see can be like a bit of a hindrance to you at some points. So that's a problem. And Alex Jensen potentially, so much can change, right? But there's an opportunity for Alex Jensen to become the next coach at Utah. Back to my earlier point, he was offered the job like 4 years ago when he was with the Jazz, and he turned it down. Ultimately, they ended up offering it to Craig Smith. But apparently there's some scuttlebutt that he's a very attractive candidate and someone who they would like to hire there. And it seems like what's going on with the Mavericks would probably make you think, if you're Alex Jensen, why wouldn't you leave? And there's another thing too, another component to this. And this is now just like a global basketball thing, right? Like if you're going to fire your coach, it's best you do it. And now, again, this is complete disregard for the guys on the floor. Like you're saying to your players currently, we really don't have a ton of interest in you guys right now. That's kind of what it says to me, because you loved your coach. You've got 4 games left in the regular season. You've been winning recently. You have the Big 12 tournament. They're not mathematically eliminated, obviously, because you can go to the tournament, put together a run, and get into the NCAA. You can go to the Big 12, play well, and get into the NCAA. But they're also like, they could beat Arizona. They could beat Arizona State. They could beat BYU again. They play them again at the end of the year. And all of a sudden, they could get into the tournament with 1 win or 2 wins in the Big 12. So this is not a team that's like, got 2 or 3 wins and it's just like, let's blow it up. Like a Kenny Payne situation at Louisville. Like, no, like these guys are still in it. And again, according to the reporting from this guy, Steve Bartle, the powers that be wanted Craig Smith out of there because of the potential that he could get on a run. They had made a decision to cut him loose. This is what I've heard from sources that I know inside from the conference and from other schools. I got on good information that they'd made a decision to do this a while ago, and they just finally had done it. But with the transfer portal, when it opens up in like a week or two, and it opens up around the first round of the NCAA tournament. So it's like, if you're going to make a change, like, let's giddy up, let's go. Who I feel bad for, but no, again, just to kind of put a bow on that, if you're going to make a change, you want to get Alex Jensen in, or whoever your next coach is going to be, as soon as possible and before the portal opens. Now, who I feel bad for that nobody's talking about, Josh Eilert. So Josh Eilert was an assistant for Bob Huggins at Kansas State, was an assistant at Bob Huggins at West Virginia, was like one of the guys you'd say, okay, he's Bob Huggins' guy, right? He was like a video guy at West Virginia. And he's been with Huggins for a long time. And last year or 2 years ago, right in the summer, Huggins gets a DUI, not his first, and he's dismissed from the team. This is after he had said some questionable things on a local radio station. And it's a bummer because I love Bob Huggins and I think he's great for basketball. But so Huggins he steps aside. So now Josh Eilert is the head coach at West Virginia for the interim. He's the interim head coach, right? But Huggins is like, hey, wait a minute. Like, I have a problem drinking. If I get cleaned up, I should be able to come back and coach this team. And so he's still living. So last year, Josh Eilert is coaching the team. Now he is like Bob Huggins, like what you could say is like a protege or a mentee or whatever. Bob Huggins is pissed at his mentee that he took this job. And Josh Eilert saying, hey, I'm trying to do what's right, what I think is right and what's right for my family. So Eilert has a whole year where he's playing under this gigantic black cloud that is Bob Huggins, like showing up at West Virginia games, you know, like literally like being there, like his name's being kicked around for a possible head coaching job again at West Virginia until a couple people like big time West Virginia brass just totally shut that down at the end of the year, probably right around this time last year. But so Josh Eilert had like a terrible situation to navigate through all of last year. Then he gets the head job, or he becomes like the lead assistant for Craig Smith in Utah. Good job. Utah's joining the Big 12. Who knows the Big 12? Josh Eilert, great guy, great coach. And now he's out there, and the guy who hired him gets fired, and now he's back in the same position. You know, like he's back in purgatory. And there's no way he makes it out of purgatory here. Like there was a chance at West Virginia, but now it's like, no, they're going to move on to somebody else. So Eilert just kind of has to keep the placeholder and move on. Most coaches do have a clause in their contract if they get bumped to interim where they get kicked some more money. So that could be possible. So that could be good news for Josh Eilert, but also could mean nothing. But this if anything, like I wanted to talk about this Craig Smith thing because this is a great example of how it's just a brand new day. Like literally, you beat BYU on the court. Your records are not that much different, but people are just zooming out and looking at both of these programs, and they're saying, wow, BYU is in a position to really elevate itself as a basketball program, right? Utah is in a situation where they're on a road to nowhere because Craig Smith had a plan this year to bring a bunch of guys together and win games, and it didn't go. Specifically in the Big 12, you've got to have a big swinging quote from the great Drake Toll, who I was texting with about this last night. I should have had him come on. But I knew enough about this situation. I just kind of wanted to go off on it. And I know Drake wouldn't care. I said, Drake, why did Utah fire Craig Smith? I've got them tomorrow at Arizona. I had them earlier on this season, and they've gotten better. Drake Toll, if you don't know, is the Locked On Big 12 host. He is a magician on the wheels of steel out there, and his podcast does amazing. Drake is an amazing guy. He's a lightning rod for controversy too, which makes him even more interesting. He also works with the Savannah Bananas. He's their like in-house announcer. Very, very cool deal. All right, so I asked him why they did this. He said, and he nailed it right away. This is what I was thinking. Pressure from BYU and other Big 12 schools. Genuinely, it's a who's you-know-what is bigger battle out there. And he said, that's the point I emphasize with it. This league, and this is a tip of the cap to the Big 12, this league breeds pressure like no other. And the arms race is on, and it's one that you can't fall behind on early. There's never been a shorter leash for hoops coaches in this league. If you prove you can't win and your program is serious about hoops, you're done. And then he said, harsh reality for the league's head honchos. But I think you see it with Bill Self too. They are still kings of the league, but fans and even national analysts are restless. No mercy in the Big 12. And he says, and I love it that way. But that's the point there too. Like Bill Self is like under fire at Kansas. Like it's crazy. It's bananas. Bill Self. I mean, they got knocked out of the top 25 for the first time in like 1,500 days yesterday. And people are like, you know, hey, maybe it's time for Bill Self to go. So that was a long college basketball rant. If nothing else, I hope it brings a little bit of clarity to some of the confusion out there as to why this guy got let go. And I'm right in the middle of it because I'm going out there tomorrow. I have him, or going out there today. I have him tomorrow, and then I have him again on Saturday. So more time with Josh Eilert, great guy. Yeah, we'll be back. We're going to be talking about, please bear with me, but when we come back, we're going to talk about Locked On Baylor and Locked On Big 12 and some of these other programs, and just how they get people excited. Because as much as I love Drake, I think some of the tactics that he and Cam employ are ridiculous. We're going to talk about those, and we're also going to talk about the Sixers. So don't go anywhere.